All right, guys, I want to talk about Robert Greene's book, Mastery. And I'm going to ramble about it, with nothing really pre planned like I normally do. The book was phenomenal. It was arguably my favorite of Robert Greene's. We're typing Robert Greene as an INFP. INFPs seem to see the affiliative better than anybody else. They are triple affiliative and they understand right and wrong, how people are all interconnected inside the community. And he finds answers to a lot of problems that people have in very simple terms. And this is why I love INFP writers. This is why they make very good teachers. This book, Mastery, is talking about being like an apprentice and finding mastery in any kind of vocation. This could be either plumbing, this could be zoology, this could be, anthropology, whatever. A lot of different things. Everyone's good in different ways. And what he wanted to get across was debunking the idea that people who are masters at their trade are very special people. They're gifted from God and they're better than you. And the only reason they're there is because they have talents that you don't have, that you were not born with, or they were born in a situation and their environment was better than yours, and that's why they're in that situation. You see this a lot with people, hating on, I don't know, billionaires and things like that, or like, oh, trying to discredit people's accomplishments because of, oh, they were born rich and so that gives them an advantage. Now granted, that might be true in some sorts, but that doesn't make them a master at their trade. And the cool thing about this book was using life's lessons to find our mastery. And so I wanted to point this out to Jehovah's Witnesses, people who were raised a Jehovah's Witness or raised in some kind of fundamentalist religion or just in a very oppressive household that didn't allow you to dream. It did not allow you to think anything of yourself and to do things for yourself. This is very common, especially in alcoholic households, where typically speaking the alcoholic father or mother will abuse the children emotionally, mentally, sometimes sexually, where it's stunted different growth and they just feel like they're unworthy of different things. Witnesses are no exception. I grew up as Jehovah's Witness, and Jehovah's Witnesses you're not brought up to dream about anything. This life right now is not important, and you don't go through school as a Jehovah's Witness thinking about a career and what you want to do later on. That does not even go across your mind. Anybody who thinks that way is worldly, materialistic, very selfish. They don't put God first. And so I didn't go through school thinking about, what do I want to do. I mean, I didn't think I was going to drive as when I was a boy. I was like, oh, well, Armageddon's going to be here before I get my license, and here I am. I'll be 36 in March. And so it's interesting for XJWs when you leave the cult and then you're like, now what? What do I do? I've never wanted anything in my life, And the cool thing about this book, Mastery, is you don't need to figure it out right away. And so let's say you just need to find a job. You can change jobs and see about it right there. Join an apprenticeship of some sort, whatever job. I use the word apprentice because that's what he used. But get a different job, get a job, learn about it, treat it as if, it's very important. If you don't like it after a year or two, switch jobs. Do the same thing. If you're fortunate enough and financially stable enough to go to school, don't worry about picking your major right away because you never really chose what you wanted to do as a Jehovah's Witness or as somebody who came from that kind of household. And so, take a varied amount of classes in a community college, kind of figure out what your interests are, and that can give you a little eureka epiphany moment where you're like, hey, I want to do this. Now, myself personally, I'm still figuring this out myself because I have a bachelor's degree in education and I work as a teacher already. Granted, I did not choose this job because I wanted to be a teacher. I chose this job because I wanted to do missionary work as a Jehovah's Witness. And so this gave me freedom to work remotely because I work online. And so that's the only reason I'm in it. I might venture off elsewhere, but it's not necessarily necessary right now. And I just took the classes that I was told to take to get the degree I needed to do my job. And so it wasn't like, oh, I want to do this class, I want to do this class. No, it's like, it was just expedited as fast as possible. And so my desires was not important when I was a Jehovah's Witness. And now I have to understand that it's okay to make decisions. It's okay to want things. And so when you read books by Robert Greene, for instance, and he really breaks down these emotional barriers that people have, and Mastery is no exception. So check out Robert Greene's book, The Mastery, and read it. It's a very, very good book. Um, and so yeah, when you can choose different subjects and things like that. Now I'm thinking back in my past, my life. I was 7 years old and I was reading animal encyclopedias. That's what I was looking into. And my teachers wanted me to go into zoology when I grew up. Now, I don't know if I'm still interested in that because that was a long time ago. And so, back on that, so just talking about what that was going to be like, I don't know. And so it's interesting. So as a Jehovah's Witness, read books by Robert Greene. Read things about empowering yourself and making decisions. Because remember, in the book is also he points out being under a bad apprenticeship isn't necessarily a bad thing either. And so being a Jehovah's Witness, you learned a lot of skills. And you can use this for your benefit because you were shoved into a building with all different types of people from different walks and life, colors, creeds, and things like that, all shoved together into a cult, and so you had to deal with each other because your friends were selected for you. So growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, you didn't go to school and make friends with random people. You only had friends who were Jehovah's Witnesses, and your friends at school were very distant, and you weren't allowed to get close with them. And so you had to learn to be close friends with people you normally wouldn't be because your religion demanded it. Okay? And typically speaking, witnesses also learn to live with less because you give all your money to Watchtower. You give as much time as possible to Watchtower. It's all about promoting and selling books. Essentially, you don't sell books, but you know what I mean. But And so the idea of being able to live an ascetic life is very easy for a Jehovah's Witness. And so you can use that to your advantage. While other people go into college and they're still trying to live a comfortable life, you can live a little bit less comfortable and go to school and live on less. Or you can be like me and travel. And when I travel, I get studio apartments. I don't want no big place with a bunch of stuff. I don't care about amenities, and that all comes from pioneering, And so, yeah, I was under the yoke of a harsh, master, Watchtower being that master. Very harsh master, but that doesn't mean I didn't learn anything when I was in there. And so this book Mastery is very good about using all forms of education, of apprenticeships and things like that to find your vocation, to find your passion, and to get to that point. And so witnesses, you don't need to rush anything. You don't need to make a decision right now. You need to sample a lot of different things to kind of figure out who you are because you never had a chance to do that. And this applies to anybody who grew up in an alcoholic household. This applies to anybody who grew up, with very restrictive household, fundamentalist religious household, things like that. And you weren't really allowed to dream and weren't really allowed to be a master at anything. Because when Armageddon was coming, being really good at a craft meant absolutely nothing. It was a waste of time. As Paul mentioned in the Greek scriptures, he considered it all refuge, striving after the wind. Well, that's what Solomon said. But yeah, Paul did call it garbage or literal excrement in his. And so, yeah, and so that's kind of an extreme viewpoint, and things like that. And so, yeah, Mastery, really good book.